you say it like it's a negative thing. This is in reference to the fact that our birth rate in the United States is now below 1.6 births for every woman in this country. It is a negative thing. I know I've seen a couple of creators on TikTok who are like, woohoo, the birth rate is super low. Yay, feminism. That's actually has nothing to do with feminism. As I said in my previous video about this, I spent some time studying population dynamics with my 17-year-old this past year. We know that in stable countries where women have access to education and birth control, and they have a high quality of life, stable health care, they have hope for the future, that the birth rate is somewhere around 2. It often isn't quite enough for replacement. Now, the global birth rate is 2.3. But in societies where things are going well and women feel that it is safe to have children, that the men in that country are safe to have children with, where they have access to healthcare, where they have a good income, good quality of life, a safe roof over their heads, we know that the population settles around replacement. It may be a little bit lower and there may have to be some immigration from other countries, but below 1.6 is not good. It's not a win for feminism, y'all. The reason the birth rate is so low is not because we're doing really well at advocating for women's rights and providing reproductive care. It's not because women have a high quality of life and a high level of security. It's not a good thing. And I know in another video I saw about this, a woman said like, oh yeah, this is excellent news because the data shows not only has our birth rate fallen really low, but people are waiting until they're much older to have children. Again, that's not necessarily a good thing. If people want to be having children and they cannot afford it, they don't feel that it's safe, they don't feel that it's responsible to bring a child into this world, that is not a yay for feminism. That's not a yay for our society. We see women waiting until they are much older, what is unfortunately in obstetrical terms considered geriatric, which is above 35 before they have children, because they can't afford to do it earlier, not because they don't want to do it earlier. Yeah, it's great if women are not having children that they are not ready to have. It's great that every child is a wanted child. It's great that women are able to have more control over their reproduction, except now in the United States, they're having less and less and less control over their reproduction. But like, please look below the surface. These numbers are not good for us as a society, and they're not good for women. As I said in my previous video, under fascist regimes, in countries where there is a high level of insecurity, there's insufficient health care, where women feel hopeless about the future, we see birth rates fall. When levels of stress go way up in a society, when levels of control, authoritarianism escalate in a society where people are less free, birth rates fall. Nobody wants to bring children into the world if they think that they can't feed and care for those children, and if they don't have hope that those kids will have access to education, healthcare, a good quality of life. If they don't feel hopeful about the future, people are not going to want to bring children into that future. That is what we're seeing in the United States right now. Again, not a yay for feminism, not a yay for women. And there's two things here specifically. One I mentioned in the previous video, and one I will get to in just a second. But when we see birth rates this low, we are not even anywhere near replacement. We develop an aging population. Who's going to take care of all of those boomers? Who's going to take care of all of us Gen X? Who's going to take care of the millennials as we get older? You can be like, well, they should be taking care of themselves. No, please understand what I'm saying. That is the reality of having an aging population where people are aging out of the workforce. They require increasing levels of caregiving. They are no longer contributing to the tax base. They are no longer contributing to the economy in the same way. They are no longer workers in the workforce. A functional society relies on a healthy proportion of people at all age ranges. When you get a society that tips very heavily toward older folks because you experienced periods where folks were not reproducing, it's not a good thing for the society overall. It's definitely not a good thing for the economy. That's just pragmatic. Like, that's just how it is. Look at Japan. Countries that end up in that situation, they have to bring in a lot of foreign workers in order to help meet the needs of the society. And we are living in a country where this regime is not allowing people to come here. In fact, they are kicking hundreds of thousands of immigrants out of this country. So the one thing that helps other countries compensate for their very low birth rates, we are shutting that down here in the United States. But the second point I want to get to that I didn't have time to talk about in that previous video is that I have seen over the last several years, but it has gotten much, much, much worse since Trump got elected, is women lamenting the fact that they will not become mothers. They either will not have children at all, they will not have as many children as they wanted to have, all because they feel that it is entirely unaffordable in this society. Before the election, obviously we are in late stage capitalism where it's impossible. I've talked about this for a while. I worry about how my Gen X kids are ever going to be able to afford a house. We are further away than ever from affordable health care. 40% of this nation's pregnant people and 40% of our children relied on Medicaid for their health care, and Republicans just gutted the shit out of that. Young people are worried about a climate change future, and now under Donald Trump, we could have had Kamala Harris, who actually had a lot of really strong environmental legislation and protections that she was interested in supporting and putting forth. But now we have Donald Trump, who, he's repealing, first of all, he just fired a bunch of EPA staff. He's repealing a ton of environmental protections, no longer fining big corporations that pollute, no longer investigating big corporations that pollute at all, and rolling back policies and agreements that were meant to help mitigate climate change. So you're looking at a world where the climate change reality is worse than ever, where it's less affordable than ever to be an American, where the American dream feels entirely elusive to Gen Z. And now, after Trump it was already really bad before Trump got elected. We already had a falling birth rate in the last several years because of late stage capitalism, because of the way the oligarchy has controlled us, because of the way the working class have felt that their quality of life was not good, because it's not been good. Unfortunately, a bunch of those working class folks blamed Joe Biden and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump when he lied to them and said he would make America great for them. Now they're realizing, oh shit, now we have full-blown fascism. Add on top of that pile of horrible reasons that made motherhood feel entirely unattainable, something that was irresponsible to consider undertaking. Now add authoritarianism on top of that, the destruction of the Department of Education, the way it's going to be harder than ever for working class kids to go to college, definitely to go to law school or graduate school or medical school. We're looking at entire career fields that have been obliterated by Trump and Elon Musk. It is harder for so many Americans to hope and dream for a better future, a future that they would want to give to their children. It is absolutely understandable why so many women are like, I cannot, in good conscience, bring a child into this world right now. And I'm not judging anybody who has decided to have a child while Trump is in office. Please don't waffles and pancakes this. So one of the things that you are forgetting here, maybe you don't want to have kids, maybe you've never wanted to have kids, but there are millions of women in the United States who feel that the chance to become a mother, to raise children, to have those relationships has been robbed from them by late stage capitalism and definitely by Trump. That is a layer of grief for people who don't want to become parents that maybe you cannot understand. But I would encourage you to pause for a minute and channel some empathy for people who really wanted to have kids and are feeling forced to make a choice not to. That's not fucking feminism when you've been deprived of the choice whether or not to reproduce. That's not fucking feminism when you have been deprived of the choice to become a mother. It's a bad thing for all of society, and it's a tremendous amount of grief and sadness for those individual women who are now no longer able to embrace motherhood because of Donald Trump. So yes, it's a negative thing. It is a negative thing. And unfortunately, under authoritarians, they also think it's a negative thing because they are embracing their great replacement theory. They want lots more white babies, but also they just want to control everybody's reproduction. And so what they see with declining birth rates, because they have crushed everybody's quality of life, have made it untenable to become a parent, to reproduce. They start trying to force people. That's why they want to roll back all kinds of birth control access to people. That's why part of why they went so hard for Roe versus Wade. Controlling women's reproduction, yeah, it's always been about oppressing women, but it very quickly gets to a point in an authoritarian regime, whether it was under Benito Mussolini or whether it's JD Vance and Donald Trump, where they try and force you to have babies because nobody is, because they get real freaked out about white people being replaced. Their agenda very quickly becomes forced reproduction. They'll start by incentivizing it. The way to get the reproduction rate up is to have a free and open society, a democratic state, an end to the oligarchy, universal health care, a living wage, a good quality of life for working class people. Then we will see a healthy birth rate of around 2.